All right, it's great to put our first conversation on the road for you real quick, everyone. Nigeria, the last few days has been very vehement around conversations that have to do with energy and how to drive the economy in real time in ways that encourage growth. But we've also seen some of these efforts hit something more like a log jam. When the CNG initiative was rolled out, for example, many persons were excited, believing that this would be, amongst other things, a game changer in the face of increased price of petroleum products. I mean, for perspectives, in a country where petrol sells for upwards of 1,000 naira, it just makes sense that you have an alternative that goes for something in the neighborhood of 200, 250 naira. But then we've also seen challenges in that regard, with explosion regarding CNG powered vehicles, and how that authorities are now saying that we need to regulate better. We need to do better with how we, as it were, roll out these initiatives and policies. And then you move to the energy sector proper. Look at power, for example. How are we doing with energy mix? In a country where the minister still promises 6,000 megawatts of power, and then with all of the grid collapses, the incessant grid collapses we've come to see, you can imagine the imminent threat that already stands in the way of that promise. In any case, there's the argument that 6,000 megawatts shouldn't even be a conversation in the world's most populous black nation in 2024. But that's a conversation that probably will wait for another time. But for this morning, we want to focus on what challenges Nigeria is dealing with as it stands right now, and what the prospects and opportunities are for this otherwise blessed nation, whether it's economic, social, or political. So our conversation today will highlight some of the elements associated with energy mix. To help us make sense of these, I'm joined by Kingsley Jeremiah. He is Deputy Bureau Chief Abuja for The Guardian. He's also energy editor for The Guardian. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Kingsley, for making our time to come on the program today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
I can imagine. You have spent some time covering energy. For a country like Nigeria, they say, well, because we have abundance of crude, we shouldn't have problems with energy. From your standpoint, how much of sense do you find in that?
Yeah, there's a lot of sense in that. The fact that you have crude oil and other energy sources in abundance, you should be able to find a way to convert that into something useful for your economy, and also find a way to also use it to develop your economy,
right,
and also develop the export market. So there's a lot of sense in the fact that yes, we have energy sources in abundance, from crude oil to renewable energy sources, and we still have a lot of coal deposits in the country. So we shouldn't be a country that has serious energy problem. We should be a country that should be helping other African countries, if not all, but the West African region, to actually provide a self-sufficient energy and also power the rest of the West African bloc.
You know, it's interesting that in 2024, Nigeria is still talking about price of petrol. At some point, we're even talking about not just the price, but also bothered about the availability of the product. So 1 minute, you don't have the product. The next NNPCL says we are going to wet the market with the product within 24 hours and things like that. When you look at the PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, which many persons had said would be a game changer, which hasn't quite been the case, whether you're talking about deregulation or liberalizing the sector. What are your thoughts exactly, given your experience covering this very important sector?
See, a lot of things are not done right, and this didn't start from now. For so long, a lot of things are not being done right, and until now, a lot of things are not done the way it should be done. The PIA itself came so late. Eventually, when it came, a lot of power play happened, and there are a lot of clauses that shouldn't be in the PIA. And despite that, those clauses are there are a lot that has to do with implementation that is not been done. The previous administration, after signing the PIA, eventually went against the PIA for political reason and transferred that to the current government. And one of the major things the previous administration did was to say, oh, we've had the PIA, but we are not going to deregulate the downstream sector because we have election that is coming up very soon. And so that was big for the PIA. You can't sign a law and then be the lawbreaker for political reason.
Right.
And this is what has been in place from the Abacha time when we started importing petroleum products. And that continued until this present day. And then you had the Tinubu administration that picked up the PIA from the previous administration, and then without doing due diligence just came to announce, oh, subsidy is gone and we're deregulating the downstream market. And so that wasn't the old situation. So I think the PIA was meant to be a game changer. But I think it is pushing us into a lot of problems that we can imagine. There are people who are already calling for a revisit of the PIA. Some people are even specifically asking that the PIA should be repealed in totality. And some of the issues these people are raising is very germane. We were thinking that when the PIA comes, we'll be able to make more money. But the PIA has not helped the Federation. The NNPC no longer remits to
additional accounts.
Yes, so the NNPC no longer remits to FARC, but why the NNPC is not remitting to FARC and the nation is getting poorer, the NNPC itself is getting richer because the provisions of the PIA ask certain amount of money to be kept by the NNPC. The provisions of the PIA also ask money to be spent on explorations that are not really necessary at this point in time for us as a country. So why the PIA should have been a blessing that would address most of the problem that we have had, it didn't really sort that. Another thing is, if the PIA was good enough, the oil production will go up. And after the passage of the PIA, we should at least see that there is a growth in the volume of crude oil output we've been having. That's not been the case. So we've seen situations where most international oil companies want to withdraw their investment. A lot of them are not moving forward with their investment plan. There are lots of deep water assets that should be developed. They are currently not being developed because these people want certain incentive and want certain things to be done.
Otherwise, they'll divest.
Yes, sir. And then you see some of them, why they are not investing in Nigeria. They are moving to other emerging markets in Africa. And then the investment climate for Nigeria is going down badly. And everything from the downstream to the mainstream and to the upstream, everything work hand in hand. While you're talking about bringing back all of the refineries so that the PMS issues won't be there, you also have the problem of where do we find the crude to actually refine.
Right.
Now, so if you look at the number of refineries you have locally today, if all of them should be working, including the state-owned refinery that have 440,000 barrel, 440, right? 405. Yes, 1,000 barrel. Now, if you have them on stream and you have 650 from Dangote and a number of other ones from the modular refinery, if you put everything together, you're having a local demand for crude of about 1.3 million barrel per day. Your current production is just something in that region. And most international oil companies, including the National Oil Company, already have a commitment, a contract that they have signed for this product. So it's very difficult for you to find the crude to refine locally. Right. From the gas point, you're also looking to drive a lot of growth, domestic utilization of gas use for LPG, for CNG, and also for industrial development. Most of the gas projects are not coming up because you need to produce enough crude so that you can have associated gas. We don't have feed that basically non-associated. Most of what you have, you're exploring them along with oil. So that's what the problem is. As soon as your production go up, you can have more gas. So most people who have planned their gas projects, including the power plants, they don't find gas to fire their plants. So that's what the problem is. So the PIA has not really addressed the bulk of the issue, we're thinking it will.
Several talking points actually from the PIA, but I'd like to ask you this very pointedly, right? I don't know how feasible this will be, but assuming, for example, that the PIA were to be repealed today, what are the implications for Nigeria? Do we go back to where we used to be pre-PIA days?
No, I won't canvass for the repeal of the PIA. If the PIA is implemented as it should be implemented, a lot of things will be right in some way. But I think that the National Assembly should find a way to revisit the PIA. And before this president came to power, he had a body that looked into some of this issue. They had recommendations to the president. One of the recommendations is possibly to find a way to have one single regulator instead of the two that we have currently. Currently, you have the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission.
The NUPRC.
Yes. Then you have the
NNPCL.
Yes, which manage the mainstream and the downstream. Now, the challenge we have seen over time is why we're thinking that when these two regulators are in place, you're going to have a seamless operation. It complicated matters for the operators across board. So that is an aspect that the president has possibly been advised to find a way to harmonize so that these issues won't be there. It also means that these operators will spend more money. So what you find currently is that the cost of oil production is going up very high. And so while you have a very dismal production, you're also producing that oil at a very high cost. The last of what I reported was about $48 per barrel to produce 1 barrel of oil. And that's possibly one of the highest you will find in the world. Now, what that means is if oil is selling for about $80 per barrel, you're possibly taking off $48 out of it. So you're coming back to about $32 as your gain. So where does that take you? So there has to be a situation where the regulatory environment is so good that the cost of production will go down. The investors will be incentivized to actually invest. So why we shouldn't look for a way to canvass for a total repeal of the PIA, I think there is a need for the National Assembly as a matter of urgency to revisit the PIA. One critical area which have been pointed to relate to the issue that you find with the provision for exploration in the inland basins. Now, why we need to explore oil across the country, there are certain things we shouldn't do at a certain time. Now, so if that resources is committed into something else, it will possibly help us for now as a country until we balance the whole issue, because you're faced with critical issue relating to foreign exchange crisis, and going by projection, that crisis might still be there for some time, despite all of what the CBN is trying to do to solve that. Now, where do you get this foreign exchange from? You get close to about 80 to 90% of the foreign exchange from the oil sector. So you should focus more on the oil sector and fix the oil sector so that you can have something that will reduce the level of pressure you have on your foreign exchange.
Interesting. Okay. Sometimes the elephant in the room is the refineries are not working, 4 of them. Whether you're talking about the 2 in Port Harcourt, the 1 in Warri, or the 4th one in Kaduna. It just seems as if we will find more comfort, we'll enjoy more peace if we just forget about those refineries and look out for an alternative. Is there hope for Nigerian refineries?
Is there hope for Nigerian refinery? I think we need to fix the refinery, and the refinery needs to work.
And that goes without saying.
Yeah. And even if we have to sell these refineries, we need to find a way to fix them and sell them. So the question of rehabilitating the refinery the pressure should be on the NNPC to do the needful. They have been provided the money. There is a contractor that have been asked to work on the project. So we have committed our money. We should ask how that will work. That's just a question for now. Because if the matter is that we have possibly not awarded the contract or not done anything, we can be talking about leaving the refinery and focusing on something else. Taxpayers' money is already on the refinery to make it work. NNPC must make it work. Okay, and I don't see a reason why, if the current management of NNPC cannot fix it, why are they there? Okay, if the current Minister of Petroleum Resources, who is the president, cannot fix the issue, why is it there? So these are people we should be directing our question to. It's not just even about NNPC. The president is the Minister of Petroleum Resources. And despite him being the Minister of Petroleum Resources, unlike before, we have another 2 ministers in charge of the oil sector. Now, you need to understand that you are spending more money to make the oil sector work than we have spent in the past. So if you are spending that, there should be a gain from it. So you should make it work. So we need to call to question the president. We need to talk more to the president, who is the Minister of Petroleum Resources, on how the refinery would work. It is
but politicians around the president will say that he is not the Minister of Petroleum Resources.
It's not acceptable anyway. Who is the minister? He's the minister. And even if he's not the minister, he's the commander-in-chief. Okay, he hires everybody. He has the right to possibly fire the people he put there if they are not working. So the NNPC needs to find a way to make the refinery work. Is there hope for the refinery? Yes, I think the refinery can work. It is just about the people who are trying to make the refinery work. I don't see it working somewhere else. It's working everywhere. Why is our own situation different? So I think calling to question and putting more pressure on the NNPC from the media, the civil society, to actually make the place work is what we all need to do.
Do you think the NNPC is an opaque organization?
Well, if you call it that, I think it is what it is. Because we see how other national oil companies operate across the world.
Right.
Our expectation is that when the PIA comes to place, the NNPC will perform better. That is the expectation of all Nigerians. I was at the NNPC headquarters when they transitioned into a limited liability organization.
The unbundling.
Yes. And the expectation and the projection we were giving raised hope for a lot of Nigerians. But right now, we can account for all of that hope. Why they came up with profits in the previous 2-3 years, the level of debt that is within the subsidiary is so high, okay? And then you can obviously see that close to about 70% of the subsidiaries are not profits making. Why are they still in operation? The debt of the refinery alone is close to about 4 trillion naira, okay? You have series of other entities where we've been paying salary. The refinery has been there for years, it's not functioning, but salaries are paid to the workers. Now you have other entities that is not making profit at all, but salaries are paid to keep the workers there. So Saudi Aramco is profitable. You have Petrobras of Brazil that is profitable. You have other national oil companies that are profitable across the world. And when you're talking about profit, you're talking about real profit. That's not just about manipulation of figure. You're talking about organizations that can willingly go to the stock markets and then raise funds. But we've not seen that in the case of the NNPC. So it is enough to say the NNPC is opaque. And in the area of transparency, the expectation is that the PIA will bring on board a level of transparency, disclosure of information as much as possible. We have not really seen that after the PIA. A lot of things are darker now than they used to be. You understand? I mean, yes, a lot of things are darker, just like the wall glasses you see within the NNPC is as dark as that. So I think the NNPC, for things to really change, has to be as transparent as possible. It has to be as accountable as possible, and then things can work because they are working elsewhere. So in our situation, if they're not working, it's about the people. You can privatize or commercialize and have the same set of people that are not making things work over the years to run it. It doesn't work. It's just like you're pouring new wine into an old jar. It's possible that is just going to stain it. So I think that's the situation with the
quite a protracted conversation to have. But we're taking a quick break now, everyone. When we return, the Dangote refinery factor and what more Nigeria must do to better position this very critical sector for growth and for the advantage of citizens. We're back shortly. Do stay with us. So I need us to talk about the Dangote refinery. I mean, 6 years from start to finish, close to $20 billion. Expectations very high, no doubt about that. How would you assess the Dangote refinery, especially in light of the developments we've seen in recent times?
Yeah, I think the Dangote refinery is one of the best things that will happen to Nigeria and Africa at large. There are a lot of positive things about the Dangote refinery in terms of energy security for Nigeria and the West African bloc, in terms of employment and different other value-added products that will come from the refinery. It will help to develop other industry within the Nigerian space and the West African space. But I think the fact that we have a level of political consideration within the Dangote refinery caused a bit of issue that makes it sometimes look like there are certain things the masses don't truly know. And the way refineries work across the world is always the same thing. Everyone who has refinery is after profit optimization. So that is that is important for every business person. But in the midst of this business person, we have a political climate in Nigeria that makes things a bit to have some sort of Nigerian factor. Now, so the crude issue for the Dangote refinery, as an energy journalist, I think for every project you have, you should have factored the issue of crude a long time ago. You shouldn't rely on, even if the crude is there within the country, you should have, in the course of not just Dangote itself, the regulator, that should be part of a critical factor in approving certain segments of the refinery.
Right.
You should factor where the crude will come from, how the supply of crude to the refinery will be as constant as possible. So from the recent happenings, that is possibly not properly done. Okay, that's one. Then I think most of the political issue around NNPC buying products, marketers buying products, crude not being supplied, should not be. There's a way the oil sector works in Nigeria. The international oil companies that have operated over time has a pattern. Even if issues are there to be resolved, they find a way to resolve them instead of instituting a media war. What we've seen over time, in recent time in the oil sector, has been some sort of media war.
Between the Dangote refinery and the authorities?
Yes, between the Dangote refinery, the authority, and other players. I consider NNPC to be
a player.
markets. So I think most of those things shouldn't be, I mean, in the business world, they're just totally unnecessary. And the gain is not there for the masses. It just complicates the situation. So I think that's why they are trying to withdraw most of those things now and then sort them on business basis. It's one of the best decisions for them to make. And the fact that the price of petroleum products has also gone up in a situations where the subsidy is, in quote, no longer there, I think it's something also very beautiful that allows every marketer to possibly approach the refinery. We have also seen what they have done with the jet fuel. Right. Most of the demand for the jet fuel is being met by the refinery, and then that is a little bit competitive to the point that the price is reduced from what is being imported into the country. So I think that's good enough. But the fragment of what the consumption for aviation fuel is quite low. So where you have the bulk of the consumption and where Nigerians will feel the impact of the refinery more is in terms of petroleum products, is in terms of PMS, right, premium motor spirit. Now, so if we have a situation where the price can be balanced between what is imported and what you have locally, it should be good enough. And I also do not think that marketers should be able to competitively source their products for wherever they want to source it from, because the indication we're also getting is that the Dangote, according to the NNPCL, the Dangote refinery still has to go through a whole lot of process of commissioning phases, which means that the refinery can produce optimally for now. So I don't think that as a country we should keep our egg in one basket. We should look for a way that there is competition as much as possible across board. So largely the marketers, the refinery owners, the crude oil suppliers should find a way to resolve their problem and not engage in media war. It helps the public better than situations where you see all of them trying to get into one war. There are court cases and all of that. Yesterday we heard about the court cases and all of that. So some of those things might not really solve our problem because you find a way where the crude supply will become a problem, the petroleum supply into the market becomes a problem, because you have more problem to deal with. Right. Particularly if the price would have to come there. We transport the product across this country by truck. If we find a way to move those products by a pipeline, it reduces the cost that we're possibly going to get at the pump. The issue around how to safely move this product across this country, and we don't have issue like what we had in Jigawa some days ago, where thousands, I mean hundreds of Nigerians died, is also something really important. How do we move crude from the point of production into the refinery and move them safely? There are different issues that are currently there that the operators need to address because they're focusing on media war. Some of those issues are not properly addressed, and those are things they don't properly bring into the media space. The refinery owner have had issue about how to lift crude oil down into the refinery. Most of them are not talking about that. Ensuring that the maritime side of it work properly is something important. Ensuring that most of the international players and the indigenous players are able to sign contracts and sell crude to the refinery owner, and is something important. How the refinery owners who also address payment issue is also very important, because these are critical issues that the masses won't always know, and which are also very technical. What the masses we always focus on is, oh, these people are not supplying this, these people are not supplying that. As soon as they're in the public space, these are conversations that dominate the issue. But all of this energy can be channeled into strengthening the value chain. There are a lot of things to be done within the system that we need to strengthen so that this can provide job for other people. But as long as you keep engaging in media war, the public suffers. The refinery owner is a businessman. He will always sell to make his profit.
Right.
At that point, it doesn't really have so much benefit for
members of the
end
public.
user. Okay, so the end user should be focused. For me and you, who are the end user, we should be focused more on how to strengthen the system and then reduce the cost at the pump. By the end of the day, as soon as you keep focusing on the wrong thing, you will never be able to achieve this reduction that we all need and that will be beneficial
Right.
to us.
So let's tie it up now, Jeremiah. So I'm wondering. In 2017, the British authorities announced that by 2040, they would have phased out virtually all the vehicles on their roads using dirty fuel, so to speak, right? This is 24 years into a new millennium. We're not talking EVs, I mean electric vehicles across the world. But Nigeria is still talking about whether or not Dangote should be able to lift crude or buy in Naira, whether or not NNPCL should be the off-taker of whatever Dangote produces or refines and what have you. Are we ready for where the world is heading regarding energy transition?
We can't run at the same pace with the rest of the world. We need to know this. We need to allow the rest of the world do their running.
Maybe set the pace?
Yes, set the pace and we follow. And I'm saying that because the energy transition conversation needs to be just. And then this is not just about Nigeria, across the African region. I saw a research recently that has tagged gas as something that is dirtier than coal. Are you saying we should go back to coal? Okay, and it is the time where countries like Nigeria and the rest of African countries are focusing on gas. There are a lot of investment going into Namibia, a lot going into Mozambique, a lot going into Senegal in terms of gas. Okay, now you're coming up with the issue of, oh, we can't really focus on gas because there are a lot of issues around gas. And they are planning a lot of taxes that is coming on gas. So even if you have them and you want to export them, there are just going to be a lot of taxes around it. So the energy transition issue should be very fair to Africa. We do not contribute the bulk of the problem. We have serious problem to deal with. Serious disaster coming from what the developed country has done. You have seen the massive flooding we have seen recently across Africa, particularly in Nigeria, and you have seen the massive destruction that's coming in that aspect. Now, even what you have, the resources you currently have, you're still trying to spend it to manage that disaster, despite the fact that the Article 9 of the Paris Agreement asks you to fund, the developed country, to fund adaptation and mitigation issue in the developing country. We also have the resources that can help in terms of energy transition. But instead of that resources developing Africa, there's been, just like you have the crude oil, there's been explored and taken to another region to create a value chain that can create a job, create all of what has to happen. When you check the annual job reports that has been produced by ARENA, International Renewable Energy Agency, the section of job from the renewable energy for Africa is always very dismal. You understand? Now, so we have to use the resources we have to develop ourselves currently. That's not to say that Nigeria is also not looking in the direction of energy transition, but in the energy transition document we have, our projection is totally different for what the rest of the world. We're looking at 10 years after the rest of the projections that you see in the developed country, which is fair enough. But are we going to find the funding? I don't think so, because in terms of financing energy transition, more money is going into the developed countries as they are coming into Africa. I think the last chart I saw was just about 1.6% of the funding coming into Africa. So that means that you won't even be able to do anything. And let me also say that in our situation, we are still dealing with energy access. if you're transiting, you're moving from something to another. We can start with the clean energy and not transit into anything.
Right.
The segment of what you have currently in terms of fossil fuel use within the African continent is still very dismal. Okay, so if you want to provide electricity, start with renewable. If you're funding any of that in Africa, it's so good. But I think the African continent will continue to use the fossil fuel they have to develop. And I don't think oil, even if you phase out all your fossil fuel vehicle in Europe, the use of oil might not go down that fast. There are a lot of other industries that rely on oil. But that might also create a situation where the price of oil will go up so high. And you can see what is happening currently. There are countries in Europe that are returning back to coal. Okay, so energy security is a priority for every country, and immediately the question of energy security is arising for any country. They abandon energy transition and embrace energy security. So for us in Africa, for us in Nigeria, I think the issue of energy security is very important. This energy security means making all the refineries work. If it means that Europe will be buying their petroleum products from Africa, it should be a good start for them. It should be something good for them. If it means that they will pick up all their LPG, CNG, and process gas from Africa, I think it will also be something good. But if you leave it open, I see a situation, there's already a declining investment into the upstream sector of the petroleum industry. What that is most likely going to create, if you find that investment going that badly, is an increase in the price of increase in the price of oil at the international market, and that is going to affect the global economy. And the rest of the world are also very aware of this. But we have limited time in Africa, and we need to understand that urgency, that if we have to explore our resources, this is the time. But it is very sad that Nigeria has not really walked in that direction. Despite the urgency, it is still much more of politics rather than doing the real work that will help us explore our oil as fast as possible so that we can take advantage of the transition window.
Well, I think it's a fine place to leave it. Thank you so very much for sharing these very valuable insights with us this morning. I've been talking with Kingsley Jeremiah.